This is a video about body paragraph structure for academic essays. If you are writing a newspaper article or a short fiction piece like a short story, or let's say you're writing a novel, these rules might not apply. But for academic essays, generally you want to have a topic sentence, a few examples or one really detailed, well-developed example, lots of analysis, and some sort of wrap-up of the paragraph. Now, there are some times when you might be able to eliminate one of these components, but most of the time, as a rule of thumb, you want to have all of these components. Now, if you're feeling a little queasy, you might want to stop right now because I'm going to be making a lot of analogies, a lot of comparisons to sandwiches of all things. I like to conceptualize the body paragraph as a sandwich. A sandwich has two pieces of bread, right? It has that first piece of bread that you bite into. That's like the topic sentence, which I'll get into in more detail in just a second. But a sandwich wouldn't really be a sandwich without some sort of substance, right? You can't just have a lettuce sandwich. You have to have some sort of something of substance like protein or avocado or tofu, whatever it is. So I like to call your examples or your support or your evidence the meat of the sandwich or the protein of the sandwich, the substance. Those are going to be your examples. But if you have a sandwich that's just protein, you just have like a meat sandwich with no condiments or other things to make it interesting, it's going to be a really dry, boring sandwich. So I like to compare transitions to condiments, things like mustard or guacamole or whatever it is that you add to the sandwich to sort of round it out. And then finally, at the end of or at the bottom of your sandwich or at the end of your body paragraph, you have another piece of bread. That's kind of like your wrap up or your analysis sentence. In some cases, you can eliminate that last piece of bread. You can eliminate that wrap up or analysis sentence. But most of the time, again, as a rule of thumb, you want to have some sort of wrap up sentence to give that paragraph a sense of closure. Let's look at all of those components in more detail: the topic sentence, the examples with details, the transitions, and the wrap-up sentence. Let's first zoom in on that topic sentence or that first piece of bread. So as you might know, a topic sentence should be the controlling idea or the main idea of the paragraph. If you know what a thesis is, think of a topic sentence as the thesis of that one body paragraph. A topic sentence is often a sub-point or a smaller point of the thesis. So it's the main idea of that paragraph. All the ideas in that body paragraph should point back to or should be proving the topic sentence. Generally, your topic sentence should be the first sentence of the paragraph. Sometimes you can have it as your second sentence if you need a transition, but as a rule of thumb, it should be the first sentence. It should be one complete declarative sentence, meaning a sentence that ends with a period and not a question mark. This is probably the most important point. It should be supportable. That means that it should require proving. So facts are good. We want to use facts and data and statistics in essays, but not as topic sentences, right? If you just list a fact as your topic sentence, there's really nothing you can do to prove it. For example, if you say something like, "The Handmaid's Tale was written by Margaret Atwood," and that's your topic sentence, that's just a fact. That's a non-debatable fact. So I can't really write a paragraph in which I prove that or support that with more examples and analysis because it's a fact that speaks for itself. So you want to make sure that your topic sentence requires proving. Again, facts are good, but not as your topic sentence. You also want to avoid a topic sentence that's too broad. If your topic sentence is more like a thesis or it encompasses the main idea of your entire essay, that means it's too general, it's too broad, and most likely what's going to happen is your examples are going to be too general and too broad and not precise enough. So you want to make sure that your topic sentence is an appropriate scope. On the flip side of that, you also want to make sure that your topic sentence is not so specific or so narrow that you only have one or two sentences to support that topic sentence. Generally, a body paragraph should be about 3/4 of a page if you're using MLA format. So a body paragraph should be several sentences. So if it's way too narrow, if your idea is way too specific and you can only include a couple sentences of support, or if it's way too general, you could write an entire essay about that topic sentence, that means it's too broad. You want to find that happy medium. Your topic sentence, of course, should not be obvious. If it's incredibly obvious, then there might not be any reason to even write a paragraph proving it, so get rid of topic sentences that are obvious. And then finally, you want to make sure your topic sentence is not an announcement. And this is something that people find kind of weird, because when you're giving a presentation or when you're talking to someone in person, you often announce what you're about to do. You might say, I'm going to talk about such and such now, or I'm going to switch gears, or I want to tell you what my main idea is. In academic writing, we don't want to do that. One, because it's redundant. Anytime you say, I think, or I feel, or I'm going to tell you, or this paper is about, you're stating something that everyone already knows, so it's wasting precious words. And also, it's just not one of the conventions of academic writing, the same way it is customary to announce your intentions in presentations. So it is customary in presentations, not so much for academic writing. So get rid of I think, I believe, my topic sentence is, I'm going to write about, my essay is about. All of those things should be eliminated from the final draft of your essay. Let's talk a little bit more about what I mean when I say examples or support. So when I say examples or support or evidence, that all means the same thing. So your examples in your body paragraphs should be concrete. They should be specific, right? Oftentimes I find myself writing vague next to a student's examples because it's not precise or concrete enough. Each example should be helping to prove the topic sentence. That's the whole point of the topic sentence, to keep your body paragraph really nice and organized. All your examples require analysis. Most of the time, your example is going to need some interpretation, some explanation. Even if it's a statistic, you need to explain the statistic. You need to explain why it's meaningful and how it helps prove your argument. If it's a personal example, that's going to require some analysis too. It's very rare that an example speaks for itself. Most of the time, it requires analysis. And if you're writing an essay about literature, you're going to have tons of analysis where you close read and unpack the quotation, or you close read and unpack the portion from the text that you're analyzing. Like I said earlier, you might include a few examples. You might have 3 examples in a body paragraph, or you might have one really detailed, elaborate example. So there's no hard and fast rule about how many examples you need to have, although you should always check with your teacher. For my class, though, it's up to you. But if you do only include one example, it needs to be a very detailed, complex, nuanced example. Please keep in mind that different essay modes, that means the type of essay you're writing. Are you writing a narrative essay, a story essay? Are you writing a descriptive essay? Are you writing an argumentative essay? So it depends on what kind of essay you're writing, but different essay modes to call for different types of examples, right? You're not going to write, or you're not going to give a descriptive example in a research paper, right? You're probably not going to be having a paragraph in which you evoke the 5 senses and describe something really beautifully in a research paper. You might not have a whole lot of statistics and data if you're writing a personal narrative paper. So keep in mind what the mode is. Usually the essay prompt will have some sort of mode written. It'll say argumentative essay, or expository, or descriptive, or narrative, something like that. And then please remember, like I said, that most examples are not self-explanatory. Most examples require analysis. And if you feel like there's nothing to say about the example, that might mean that your example is not very convincing or not very interesting, and maybe you want to find another one. Types of examples. So there are several different types of examples, and again, it depends on the type of essay you're writing, the mode that you're writing in. But things like quotations from somebody who has witnessed something, from experts, from scholars, from politicians, depending upon the essay. Statistics, facts, expert opinion, sensory descriptions, evoking the 5 senses, personal experience. And again, for many essays, you're asked not to talk about personal experience or not to use I, but for some essays, you need to reference your own experiences, right? Especially if you're writing an essay about your own life, you're going to draw on your experiences. Anecdotes, narratives. A narrative is just a story, and an anecdote is just a very brief personal story. Hypothetical examples that you construct, artistic proofs. Experiments or documentary evidence. So evidence from some sort of primary source, like a recording or an interview or an email, something like that. Let's talk about transition. So like I said earlier, a transition is something that I kind of like to imagine as the condiment to your sandwich. It brings everything all together. Just like if you have a sandwich with way too many condiments, it becomes kind of sloppy and not very much fun to eat. If you have a body paragraph with way too many transitions, it seems sloppy, it seems verbose, it just seems sort of unnecessary, and it can also make your writing seem a little bit awkward. But if you have no transitions, just like if you have no condiments in a sandwich, your sandwich is going to be dry. If you have no transitions in an academic essay, it's going to seem really choppy and your ideas are not going to come together nicely. So I can't give you an exact amount of transitions, right? Writing is an art, not a science. But I notice that the best body paragraphs tend to have about 2, 3, 4 transitions. You want to use them sparingly, and you also want to make sure they flow. You want to make sure they work and they flow with your tone. And they're also consistent with your personal style as a writer. I won't read through every single type of transition type, but I'll zoom in on a couple. So there are several transitions you can use if you want to add ideas or add examples, things like furthermore, moreover, in addition, first, second, third. You'll notice there's some overlap in these transition categories. If you're comparing things, you can say however, or nevertheless, or meanwhile. Again, not all of these words are synonymous, right? You have to pick the word that's going to make sense in the context that you're using it. If you're proving something, things like because, furthermore, indeed, in fact, obviously, although obviously kind of comes with the tone. To show exception, nevertheless, in spite of, despite, or to show time, soon, finally, later, previously, formerly. You want to avoid using too many adverbs in a row. It can make your writing seem a little bit amateurish, but a couple would be fine. More transitions to emphasize something naturally, emphatically, certainly. And again, keep in mind the tone when you're using words like certainly or without a doubt. That's going to convey a certain tone to the reader that you might or might not want. To show sequence, after, consequently, previously. And then this is the one I really want to zoom in on to give an example. You should be using a lot of these in academic essays within your body paragraph. So you should find yourself looking for transitions like for instance, for example, to illustrate, to demonstrate. If you find that you haven't really used any of these example transitions, it might be a red flag that you don't have enough examples. You should be using these a lot throughout your essay. And then when you're summarizing or concluding, there are transitions you can use, therefore, accordingly, hence, consequently. And again, keep in mind your personal style. For me, I think the word hence is sort of annoying, so I don't use the word hence. But if you want to use the word hence and it makes sense and you're using the correct punctuation, go for it as long as it flows and it makes sense within the context. I'm going to ask that you don't use words like to conclude or in conclusion just because they become so cliche. I can't tell you how many conclusion paragraphs or just the conclusion of an introduction paragraph or the very end of a body paragraph I've seen begin or end with the word in conclusion or to conclude. So I'm just going to ask that you don't use that. I think you can come up with a transition that's even better than something like in conclusion. So this is, again, a lecture about body paragraph structure. Go back and look through these slides for help. If you feel like this is something you already understand, feel free to move on to the next lecture.